Hello and welcome to PocketGamer.biz's weekly news digest for the week ending the 24th of April 2015. My name's Jon Jordan. Hi. So obviously the big news this week was after the big news 2 weeks ago that Apple Watch was being pre-ordered. Now it's the Apple Watch is out. So a certain number of millions of people around the world woke up excitedly to receive their pre-orders. It seems to still be that the ones that kind of came out definitely today were the 38mm kind of sports watch kind of ones. They seem to be the ones with obviously cheapest ones, I guess probably the highest amount of production on them, so everyone who has them is now frantically unboxing and tweeting and doing all those kind of things. I guess it's kind of more interesting to a degree for the majority of people who don't have them, kind of seeing how the ecosystem changes. So on PocketGamer.biz we've been kind of tracking some of the games that have been announced. This is a bit difficult before the actual watch comes out because some people won't really want to talk about stuff that's coming out. And equally, as we've kind of said before, the watch is not really a kind of a strong kind of user case that games are going to be a core app in the way that they have been and for phones and tablets. So we kind of wait and see. But I think we got up to we're about 29 at the moment. There's a few we could drop off, a few we could add on. So probably up to maybe about 40 games I think that were announced. It's kind of interesting though. What we're kind of seeing is there's a few games that are kind of games in the sense that they run majority on the phone and have some sort of iPhone kind of support to do kind of other functionality, often doing in-app purchases, but looking at leaderboards and that kind of stuff. But there's quite a lot of games now coming out. So Ubisoft seems to be one that's doing this quite a lot. That's having companion apps. So quite how useful this will be. Sorry, I don't mean I say Ubisoft. That's kind of Freudian. It's Gameloft. I mean, so Gameloft have released some what they call companion apps for Brothers in Arms 3 and Modern Combat 5, if we get the numbers right, and Asphalt 8. So they all have kind of some functionality, more really notifications. So I guess we're kind of going to see this interesting situation where for most of the big apps that are happening on the Apple Watch, it's kind of getting the balance of providing kind of real-time notifications but not too much information. So kind of saying something's happening, you can maybe see some information here, but probably now kind of time to get your phone and do something kind of a bit more kind of in-depth on the phone. So gaming, that's why gaming kind of sits in a weird place, I think, with the Apple Watch. But anyway, so I have to say, kind of, I was one of those lucky millions who woke up although I woke up rather belatedly and went back to sleep again afterwards, despite my watch arriving. So I do have one. I'm actually quite a fan of watches. So I already have some watches. So you can see some watches here. So there's some watches that tell the time. There's a Pebble here. Obviously you can see this hasn't been charged up for a while. But a Pebble is effectively the first kind of smartwatch that gained 1 million users. We have what else do we have? We have a Nike Plus running watch. So I've had one of those for about 2.5 years now. So every time I go running, I have that. That's pretty kind of core to my fitness regime. And I have one of these as well, which is kind of argue whether this is a watch or not. This is a Fitbit charge heart monitor built in as well. So I've had various Fitbits over the years, and this is something. It's not really a watch. It's a health monitor, and you wear it all the time. So obviously the Nike running watch you just wear it when you run. It's a pretty chunky thing. It's got GPS built in, tracks your watch, tracks your runs. This one is just basically tracks movement that has a heart rate monitor built into it. And also most importantly tracks sleep. So here we have on this one we have the Apple Watch. So combination. So let's see if we can get this one to start. Probably difficult for you guys to see there, but there we have the little butterfly. But what you can kind of see immediately, this is the small one. This is the 38mm one. There's a 42mm one, slightly bigger. But obviously, lovely screen. You probably can't see it, but so we see the time and the date there. But very quickly, that's kind of like kind of going off to kind of stop battery life. So you have this kind of interesting scenario with the Apple Watch where it's a nice piece of hardware. Battery life is clearly an issue that they're kind of dealing with. We'll kind of wait to see when people start using these and getting a lot of notifications and kind of quite how that impacts battery life. And the reason I kind of mention that is not so much that we're kind of used to charging our phones overnight now, and the smartwatches that have been out to date on Android where we've been charging those overnight as well. But one of the key things I think a lot of people will be using or looking to use the Apple Watch for is this kind of fitness kind of sensors type stuff, which it does. Has a heart rate monitor built into it, so it can track that all the time. and obviously it can track activity, and famously, well, if you've been sitting down for an hour, it will give you a notification to stand up for a minute or something. This whole kind of Tim Cook, sitting is the new cancer kind of meme that he started off. Obviously, one of the big issues for the Apple Watch is at the moment. I mean, I think it's fairly small. It's kind of, I say this is the smaller one, but it's not a big watch by any means. Whereas the trend has been to get kind of for fashion to get bigger watches. So I think it's small enough that you could wear it when you were asleep. But obviously the issue is battery life. But the problem they have is they can't track sleep, which is a key part of fitness and health. So we'll kind of, I guess, wait to see how in future years the Apple Watch kind of evolves. Just quickly before I kind of go a bit more in depth in kind of what's happening with the games on it, I will point out my favourite bit of the Apple Watch so far is the box. So this is the box it came in, and this is the kind of like the case. And I would almost say I'm not a particularly big fan of Apple industrial design when it comes to the actual devices, the iPhone and the iPad and the Apple Watch. I mean, it's nice. They spend a lot of time doing it. It is of a high standard, but not particularly kind of my interest in terms of that kind of very abstract industrial design. But these boxes are really nice. So more impressed by the boxes than the phone. I guess that's kind of a bit contrary. But what has been interesting is so Apple has always had this kind of scenario that you don't need a manual. You kind of have to. You just kind of open up their product, and it kind of does you find its own way. It's so intuitive. Maybe I'm stupid. Lots of people will probably cheer at this point, but I've definitely found that's not the case with the Apple Watch. So with the Apple Watch, I was kind of I've no idea what's going on with this. I'm trying, obviously you're pairing it with your iPhone to get it to work, to get it to do anything. As soon as you buy one, if you don't have an iPhone, it won't even tell the time. It won't do anything at all. But to kind of, even to do stuff like kind of changing watch faces and certainly, it is quite complex when you start to set up notifications and you want to switch some things off and some things on. So I think that's kind of it. That will be interesting. That it's clearly at the current stage it is a early adopter kind of product, even though potentially people think there might be 20 million sold this year. Maybe more early adopters globally than there used to be. But this is not a kind of mass market product, I think, by any means. So that's kind of interesting for Apple, because I think Apple's products and its success today has been kind of predicated on the fact that they make technology simple, and pretty much your metaphorical grandma or your 2-year-old can use an Apple product. This is definitely not the case with the Apple Watch, and I think that will be something interesting to watch, just to see kind of what the user case is. And kind of something I kind of mentioned back with the Pebble as well. I think again with kind of watches. As I say, lots of watches, and you have them use them in different kind of ways. So I'm probably not a kind of a typical example. So, but I think some people, potentially will have watches for running, and potentially, you have a digital watch, which is your day-to-day, and then potentially have a more expensive analog watch, which is your dress watch, or one passed down from the family, and all this kind of stuff. So I think the interesting other thing will be a more kind of what's the word? Sociological maybe approach to how people use watches, which is if people like watches, they don't just have one watch. People who wear watches normally have at least 2 watches, and often lots of people have, I guess like me, potentially have a dozen watches or so. I will point out none of mine are expensive, but as soon as you get the kind of the watch thing, you start having there's this one, and I get this one, and I wear that one for this kind of reason. And I think it'd be interesting for whether the Apple Watch kind of sits into that kind of portfolio approach that people have for watches, which is not really, I think, what Apple have designed it for. Apple have designed it to be worn every day. For at least 18 hours, apart from when it's not charging, because it's kind of tracking a lot of this kind of health stuff, and it's your notification alerts and all this kind of malarkey. So more people spend, it's a considerable sum of money for a full watch that they kind of wear less occasionally than all the time. And obviously, if people don't wear watches at all, it's going to be a big ask for them to buy an Apple Watch and start wearing a watch all the time if they haven't really worn a watch to begin with, because there's still this kind of issue where if the watch does pan out to be something that tells the time, is a bit of a status symbol, and you can get notifications that then take you to your iPhone, is that going to be enough for most people, where most people are looking at their phone however many 100 times a day anyway? So is that kind of scenario where they just kind of get a notification on their watch going to be enough? So we wait to see. Just to point out, there are, when it comes to games, I said there's a lot of these companion apps that I don't think are really going to work. There are lots of kind of tile-based learning games and kind of brain training games, and just kind of people trying their arm a little bit with the Apple Watch as a device that may take off. And interestingly, a lot of those are paid. But there's 2 games that have kind of particularly kind of stand out, at least at the moment. Interestingly, they both come from Finnish developers, so Finland has also been leading the world for the last couple of years with Rovio and Supercell, and lots of other companies, but those are the two really big ones. Seriously have had a game out called Best Fiends, a kind of a second generation match 3 game, and they've done quite a nice Apple Apple Watch support addition to that game. That game was already out for iPhone and Android as well, and also a new kind of startup, which is from very, very experienced guys in the Finnish industry, and that's called Everywhere Games, and they are just making games for wearable devices. So the first game that come out is purely for the Apple Watch, and it's called Rune Blade, and it's I guess a kind of based on kind of text-based RPGs. It does have a iPhone kind of companion app to it, but the main point of it is a Apple Watch game where you do kind of short tasks on it and kind of play the game on the watch. So we wait to see how those ones go. Those ones are both free with in-app purchases as part of the game system. So we wait to see whether we get our first $1 million game, top-grossing game from an Apple Watch, and that'll be in the coming months maybe. But catch you next week.